My best friend stole my fiancé and told me to move on, so when he came begging for answers 5 years later, I told him exactly what he had told me. Reed and I had been friends since we were 6 years old. Same little league team, same middle school cafeteria table, same college, same group chat for a full decade after graduation. He was the first person I told when I bought my apartment, the person I asked to be my best man, the person I trusted with a spare key for whenever I went out of town. Talia entered the picture the spring after my first promotion. She was charming in the way that makes you feel like you are the only person in the room, and for about 6 months I thought I had finally gotten lucky. Reed liked her too. The two of them got along like they had known each other for years, which everyone in our circle thought was a great sign. 2 years in, I proposed. She said yes, picked the venue, picked the date, picked the dress, picked the caterer. The wedding was 4 months out when I noticed the first odd charge on my card, then the second, then a line of credit I had never opened. By the time the full picture came together, somewhere close to $40,000 had been run up in my name across 3 accounts she had created herself using documents she pulled from my desk drawer. For a week, I sat on the information. I wanted to be sure. Everything got pulled into a folder, organized chronologically, and the plan was to sit her down after a dinner the following Friday. She never made it to that Friday. On Wednesday, she sat me down on my own couch in my own apartment and told me she had fallen in love with somebody else. The name was not on offer. She moved out that same night. 48 hours later, Reed called and asked to meet for coffee. The man across the table looked more nervous than I had ever seen him. He told me he and Talia had been seeing each other for a little while. He told me these things just happen. He told me he hoped I could be the bigger person because Talia had been very worried about how I would take it. Then he leaned forward, put on his most concerned face, and delivered the line I would be storing in a glass case for the next 5 years. You really need to move on. Sitting in the backpack at my feet was the folder containing the proof of every dollar she had stolen from me. The folder stayed in the backpack. The right move at that moment was not the satisfying one. Talia had already spun a version of me to Reed and to our entire friend group where I was controlling, suspicious, unstable. Anything I said in defense at that point was going to sound like exactly what she had told them I was. So the cards got closed, the debt got paid down, the bank got a report, and the account she had opened bounced back to her own social security number. Then Reed's advice turned out to be the most useful thing he had ever given me. I moved on. The wedding got called off. The shared friend group disappeared with Reed and Talia. The photos went into a box in the back of my closet. The first year was hard. The second year was better. By the third year, there was a new job, a new city, a new partner who actually told the truth about money, and a piece I had not realized was missing the entire time I had been with Talia. Reed and Talia got married somewhere in that stretch. A wedding announcement got forwarded to me by accident, and I deleted it without opening the attachment. 5 years passed. Then one Tuesday evening, Reed showed up at my door. He had driven 6 hours to get there. He looked like he had not slept in a week. The first thing out of his mouth, before he was even in the entryway, was a question about whether Talia had ever done anything strange with money when she was with me. Anything at all. Anything I could tell him about. He had found things. Cards in his name he had never opened. Cash withdrawals nobody could explain. A second loan against the equity in their house that he had not signed for, except his signature was apparently on the paperwork from a notary office he had never been to. There was also, he admitted, a question about whether their 2-year-old was actually his. He had not run a test. He was almost certain. The reason for the 6-hour drive was that he needed to know if I had seen any of this back then, if there were patterns, if there was anything at all in his history with her that could help him understand what he was now dealing with. The folder I had built 5 years ago was sitting in a filing cabinet in my office, about 3 feet from where we were sitting. The bank report, the card statements, the proof that she had done the exact same thing to me 2 months before the wedding, and that the real reason she had jumped ship was because she knew I had caught her. None of that had ever made it to Reed. He had never asked. 5 years earlier, he had walked into my apartment, told me to move on, and the only thing I had done since was follow his instructions to the letter. So he got to sit on my couch and ask his questions. And I looked at him, this man I had known since we were kids, sitting on my couch with his hands between his knees and dark circles under his eyes, and I felt the words rise up from wherever I had been keeping them for 5 years. He had just asked me again if Talia had ever done anything strange with money. I let the question hang in the air for a second. Then I leaned back in my chair, kept my voice as calm and steady as I could manage, and said, "You really need to move on." The color left his face like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I said it again, slower this time, making sure every word landed. "You really need to move on, Reed." Those were your exact words. That coffee shop 5 years ago, you sat across from me and you said that to my face while the woman who had just robbed me was waiting for you in your car. So tell me, how does it feel to hear it now? He just sat there. His jaw worked a little, like he was chewing on something he could not swallow, and his eyes were wet, but he was not crying. I had played this moment out in my head more times than I want to admit. In every version, Reed got defensive. In every version, he told me I was being unfair, or that the situations were different, or that I was enjoying this. That is what I had prepared for. That is the version of this conversation I had rehearsed in the shower, and on long drives, and in the middle of the night when Funmi was asleep next to me and I was staring at the ceiling. But Reed did not give me any of that. He just sat there with his hands still between his knees and said, "I know what I said. I know what I did. I am not here to argue about that. I am here because my kid might not be mine, and my house might not be mine by next month." His voice was flat, not angry, not defensive, just tired in a way that went deeper than not sleeping. It was the voice of a man who had already used up all his fight before he got in the car. And honestly, it threw me off. I had a whole list of things ready to go. Every point I wanted to make, every question I wanted to ask, every piece of the last 5 years I wanted to throw back in his face. But you cannot throw a punch at someone who is not standing up. So I switched directions. I leaned forward and asked him something I had wanted to know since the day he called me to that coffee shop. I asked him why he believed every single word Talia said about me, why he took her side without even asking me what happened, why he sat across from me me and told me to move on like I was the problem, when the woman sitting next to him had just cleaned out my bank accounts. Reed rubbed the back of his neck and looked at the floor for a long time. Then he said, because she cried when she told me. She said you tracked her phone. She said you went through her purse. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. That is the truth, and I'm not going to pretend it is anything better than that. He looked up at me after he said it, not like he was waiting for forgiveness, more like he was waiting for me to hit him with whatever came next, and he was ready to take it. And that is the part that messed me up. I had been carrying this picture of Reed in my head for 5 years. The picture was of a guy who knew what he did and had talked himself into being okay with it. A guy who told himself some story about how love is messy and people make mistakes, and it all worked out in the end. But the man on my couch was not that guy. The man on my couch was telling me, flat out, that he believed Talia because believing her was easier than looking at himself. He chose the lie because the lie let him keep what he wanted. And the fact that he could say that out loud, without trying to dress it up or make it sound better, made it a lot harder to do what I had been planning to do, which was let him sit there and figure it out on his own. I sat down in the chair across from him. The filing cabinet was right there, close enough that I could have rolled my chair over and pulled the drawer open. I did not mention it. I did not even look at it. I just sat there and let the room go quiet for a minute because I needed to figure out what I was actually feeling, and it was not what I expected. Then Reed said something that changed the whole shape of the conversation. He said it quietly, like he was not sure he should even bring it up, but he needed me to hear it. She told me last week that if I tried to leave, she would tell everyone I hit her. She said she already has a friend who would back her up. I felt something cold move through my chest. Not surprise, exactly. More like recognition, because I had heard this song before. Not the exact same words, but the same music. When Talia left me, the story she told our whole friend group was that I was controlling, that I tracked her, that I went through her things, that she was scared of me. None of it was true, but it did not matter, because by the time I even knew the story existed, it was already the only version anyone had heard. People I had known for years stopped calling me back. Guys I had played basketball with every weekend suddenly did not have room on the team. She had built the whole thing before she walked out the door, and I never got a chance to defend myself because defending yourself against that kind of story just makes you look like exactly what they already think you are. And now she was doing it to Reed, except this time it was worse. This time it was not, he is controlling. This time it was, he hits me. This time there was apparently a friend ready to say she saw it, and there was a kid in the middle of it, a 2-year-old who might or might not be his, living in a house that might or might not be his by next month, with a woman who was already building the story she would tell if he tried to leave. I am not going to pretend that some part of me did not feel a small, ugly satisfaction when Reed first showed up at my door. There it is. I am being honest. For about 30 seconds, it felt good to know that the universe had delivered exactly the kind of justice I never thought I would get to see. But sitting there, listening to him describe the same trap I had been in, hearing Talia's same playbook come out of his mouth like he was reading from my own notes, that feeling drained out of me completely. What replaced it was something I was not ready for. It was the memory of sitting in my apartment after Reed told me to move on, with the folder in my backpack and nobody to show it to. The memory of calling my own sister and having her say she had heard some things and maybe I should give Talia some space. The memory of lying awake at 3 in the morning knowing the truth and knowing that the truth did not matter because the story was already set and I was already the villain in it. That is what it feels like when nobody believes you. And as much as Reed had earned whatever was coming to him, I could not sit there and watch somebody walk into that same darkness when I knew exactly how long it takes to find your way out. I still did not mention the folder, but something in the room had changed and I think we both felt it. I took a breath and made a decision about how to handle the next few minutes. I told Reed I needed him to walk me through everything from the beginning. Not the feelings, not the story about how he started to notice things, not the part about whether the kid was his, just the money. Start to finish, every dollar he could account for, every account he did not open, every charge he did not make. Reed nodded and pulled out his phone. He opened his banking app and turned the screen toward me, scrolling through a list of transactions that went back months. There were charges at stores he had never been to, cash withdrawals from locations nowhere near his house, and credit alerts for cards that had been opened using his information. Then he swiped to a photo he had taken of the loan document, the second mortgage against his house, the one with his signature on it from a notary office he had never visited. He zoomed in on the signature and held the phone closer so I could see it. Look at the way the J curves at the bottom, he said. That is not how I sign my name. It is close, but it is not right. I looked at it for a long time, and I felt something click into place in the back of my brain because I had seen that handwriting before. 5 years ago, on the signature lines of 3 credit applications that had been filed in my name, Talia had used the same slightly off version of my handwriting, the same careful imitation that got about 90% of the way there, but always missed something small. The curve of a letter, the spacing between the first and last name, the way the pen lifted between strokes. She had not even changed her technique. It was the same method, the same slant, the same little mistakes, like she had a system and she just plugged in a new name and ran it again. I did not say any of that out loud yet. I just kept looking at Reed's phone and feeling the weight of what I was seeing settle into my chest. While Reed was still talking, walking me through a credit alert he had gotten 2 months ago that he thought was a mistake at first, my phone buzzed on the arm of the chair. I glanced down. It was a text from a number I did not recognize. I picked it up and read it, and the room got very still. The message said, "Hi, it has been a long time. I heard Reed is having a hard time and I just want to make sure nobody is filling his head with old stories. You and I both know what really happened between us. Let us keep it that way." I read it twice, then I turned the phone around and showed it to Reed. He stared at the screen. His face went through about 3 different things in the space of 2 seconds, and then it landed on something hard and tired. "That is her number," he said. "She must have checked my car's GPS or my phone." He said it like he was not even surprised, just confirming something he had already suspected. Talia knew he was here. She knew he had driven 6 hours to see me, and before we had even gotten to the part that mattered, she was already reaching out to try and shut it down. She was not calling Reed to yell at him or beg him to come home. She was texting me, the person she had not spoken to in 5 years, to make sure I kept my mouth shut. That told me everything I needed to know about where her head was. She was not panicking about her marriage. She was managing the information. She was trying to control what Reed heard before he heard it. I set the phone down and called out for Funmi. She came in from the hallway. I could tell from the way she was walking that she had already been close, probably heard more than she let on. I told her what was happening. I told her Reed had come because Talia was doing the same thing to him that she did to me. I showed her the text message. Funmi read it slowly, then looked up from the phone. She looked at Reed, really looked at him, and I could see her putting it together. She did this to him too? She asked me. I nodded. Funmi was quiet for a second. Then she said, then show him the folder. I did not move. I just sat there with my hands on my knees because the folder had been mine for 5 years. It had been the only proof that I was not crazy, that I was not the person Talia told everyone I was, and part of me had been holding on to it, not because I thought I would ever need it again, but because it was the only thing that made the truth real. Giving it to Reed meant letting go of that. Funmi saw me hesitate. She did not push. She just said, very calmly, if you sit on that and something happens to him or that kid, you are going to carry that. I am not going to watch you carry that. That was it. That was the thing that moved me, because Funmi does not say things she does not mean, and she was not telling me what to do. She was telling me what she was not willing to watch me become. I got up from the chair. I walked to the filing cabinet in my office. I pulled open the second drawer, reached past the tax documents and the insurance papers, and pulled out the folder. It was thicker than I remembered. Manila, bent at the corners, with a rubber band around it that had gone a little brittle from sitting in the same spot for 5 years. I brought it back into the living room and set it on the table between us. Reed's eyes locked onto it. I kept my hand on top of it. Everything she did to me is in here, I said. Every card, every account, every dollar. I built this 5 years ago. I was going to show it to you the night you sat me down and told me to move on. It stayed in my backpack that whole conversation. Reed reached for the folder and I pressed down on it a little harder. He stopped. I looked at him and said, before you open this, I need you to understand something. I had this the whole time. I could have told you. I chose not to. And I need you to sit with that the same way I had to sit with what you chose. The room was so quiet I could hear the fridge humming from the kitchen. Reed pulled his hand back. He looked at me for a long moment and then he nodded. Not fast, not like he was brushing past it. A slow nod, the kind that means a person actually heard what you said and is letting it land somewhere real. I took my hand off the folder. Reed picked it up. He opened it carefully, like he was afraid of what was inside, and started going through it page by page. His hands were shaking. Not a lot, but enough that the papers made a soft rattling sound every time he turned one over. He went through the bank report. He went through the card statements. He went through the copies of the applications Talia had filled out in my name, the ones with her handwriting pretending to be mine. Halfway through the folder, he stopped. He was looking at the page that showed the 3 accounts Talia had opened using my information. The account numbers were listed in a column on the left side. He stared at them for a long time, then pulled out his phone and opened something. He held the phone next to the page, comparing numbers. These account numbers, he said, and his voice had gone very quiet. The last 4 digits. 2 of them match accounts I just found in my name. He looked up at me. I looked back at him. She had not just done the same thing twice. She had recycled parts of the first scheme. Same methods, same patterns, maybe even the same contacts at whatever place she used to get the documents forged. It was not a coincidence. It was a system. And Reed and I were not 2 separate stories. We were the same story, run twice, with the names changed and the numbers updated. Reed sat with that for a minute, just looking between the folder and his phone. And then he asked me the question I knew was coming. What did you do when you found out? So I told him. I walked him through the whole thing, step by step, the way you walk someone through directions to a place they have never been. I told him I closed every card first, called each one individually, sat on hold for hours, explained the same story to 6 different customer service people who all asked me if I was sure it was not just a misunderstanding. I told him I went to the bank in person with the statements and filed a report, and that the bank traced